Hello everyone, welcome to my Batman Arkham Asylum, hard difficulty, no damage walkthrough. This is going to be Poison Ivy's boss fight, and what's there to say about Poison Ivy's boss fight other than it's the worst boss ever made in this game by far. I don't know what they were thinking with Poison Ivy's boss fight, but it just goes to show how brain dead the developers were with the last 20% of this game. And starting from the pump access area, which I just did in the previous video, the rest of the game is going to showcase diminished quality, it's going to showcase completely brain-dead designs, it's going to showcase a development team that clearly didn't playtest the last 20% of this game properly, and it's all going to be represented in this boss fight and in the later encounters. But Poison Ivy's boss fight is the worst boss on this game for a couple of reasons. But like the main thing is they once again do the same mistake like they did in the pump access area, where they try to combine free flow combat with elements of anti-free flow gameplay. And the amount of times you're going to get betrayed by your own mechanics and you're just fighting the game more so than Poison Ivy is obnoxious. And she has two phases. And overall, the fight is 8 minutes long. Why on earth should a boss like that take 8 minutes long? And I get it's the hard difficulty, this and that, but you shouldn't make your own boss fight miserable on the hardest difficulty. Just making a fight arbitrarily long because you've given the boss like increased amounts of life, yet the pattern is still the same. What the fuck are you trying to achieve right there? How is that a difficult challenge? If anything, all you're doing is just showcasing how broken Poison Ivy is in certain situations. And she's really, like, more known to be broken in the second phase. Like, the first phase is dumb, but it's manageable at best. And all she's doing is just using a vine attack against you, where she will try to spawn vines from the ground. And you can avoid them, but there are just certain situations where Poison Ivy can unleash her vines in positions where you simply can't avoid it, and the game practically forces you to stand in the middle of the arena so that you actually have a chance of not getting some kind of pattern where Poison Ivy just screws you. Because if you stand on the edges of the arena, the chances for Poison Ivy to do vine attacks that are impossible to avoid and Batman's evade just isn't enough to cover the distance necessary to bypass them. It's dumb. But then you get past that, and also, like, the vines, they have very weird detection on them, I would say. And plus, like, you see, like, little grass spawn from the ground, indicating where the vines are going to spawn from, but at times, it's not quite honest, and, like, the vines appear outside of the maximum boundary that the grass is showing. So you gotta give the vines the widest berth possible. But you do that, and then you get to a part in the first phase that's actually fun, where you gotta time your Batarang throw to actually deal a lot of damage to her when she exposes herself. Like, if the fight was mainly that, where you had to time your Batarang throws, or like give you some kind of mix of your equipment to actually deal with Poison Ivy in a short but sweet encounter, this could have been a great boss fight, but no. They settle for a dragged out scenario, and you're getting betrayed by the mechanics, and then the second phase is even worse, because she adds in hypnotized policemen into the mix. So this is yet again exemplifying the situation where they're trying to introduce enemies that complement the free flow combat alongside an enemy slash boss in this case that does not complement the free flow combat. And the amount of times you might accidentally do the wrong evade animation because Batman prioritizes the shortest evade, where he tries to jump over an enemy's head and you get caught in the vines. That is bad. And it can get you screwed a lot of the times. But the thing I've noticed is that the vines take longer to spawn from the ground in the second phase. So it's like they knew about this. But either way, they should have had the rationale necessary to comprehend that you don't put free flow enemies alongside an anti-free flow boss. And on this recording, I got this boss fight on my first try. That you didn't see the amount of times I failed against her. But like on this recording, I got it on the first try. But on every other recording, I must have gotten damaged due to bullshit like 10 times. And that's on each recording, which is retarded, really dumb. And I think Poison Ivy was one of the main reasons why I decided to restart the entire game and do this recording again. But you're so limited in how you're supposed to approach her, and in this first phase, don't even bother throwing your Batarangs when her core isn't exposed. When you get to this part where the camera goes into a different position, and Poison Ivy is trying to expose her weak spot, like, this is definitely where you'll want to use your Batarangs. And this is the fun part. This part I actually like, because there's a pattern to Poison Ivy's movement. So, watch. Did you see how the projectile spawned, and then I ran to the side, and then I tapped my Batarang? Well, there's a pattern there. Like, for the first phase, what you want to do is you want to walk a bit to the side. Like, you want to stand on the edge of the arena before Poison Ivy does her attack, and then the moment you see the projectile fire, move, like, just sprint all the way to the side, and then throw your Batarang. Although I think what I should be doing instead, I think I messed up the pattern the first time I was doing this, but I should just be throwing the Batarang the moment she actually fires her projectile. I mean, as I'm moving. Because obviously if I'm standing still and I use the quick Batarang, she'll hit me during the animation because you can't evade during that animation. But watch the timing here. So the projectile spawns, she fires it, I'm going to run to the side and press the Batarang button. Just note exactly when I'm throwing it, and note how I'm moving when I'm throwing my Batarang. That is the best way to ensure that you are damaging Poison Ivy's weak spot and avoiding the projectiles. The pattern is always the same. It's a lot of fun doing it this way. But that's not what they intended for this fight. Instead, a vast majority of this fight is just avoiding these stupid vines. And then in the second phase, it's even worse because you have to avoid vines and hypnotize policemen. And it's really dumb. But once again, watch this. So, by the way, that barrage just then, she only does that barrage if you hit her core. So if she fires, I'm going to throw my Batarang. And I got to make sure I evade to avoid the second projectile. So watch once again. Projectile spawns, fire, move to the side, throw the Batarang, and then dodge. That is definitely how you want to do this, and she's very low on life, so I should just be using my Batarangs right over here when the vines are not proven to be a problem. Because she will be stunned, and that'll be the end of this phase. Like, this fight should have been over right here, but no, they make you do 2 phases. Like, you couldn't put, like, all of the explosive gel, Batman, you had to put only 1 explosive gel right here. Like, what is it? It's like he's giving Ivy a chance to be annoying. He's doing what the developers are intending, and not what he wants to do, which is really dumb. But this right here is once again another situation where the game practically forces you to use the Ultra Bat Claw. And by the way, you see that timing just then? Look how long it took for the vines to come out of the ground. It's slightly, like, slower. It's slightly slower in the second phase. It's hard to notice, but I noticed it a couple of times. The vines are a lot slower to come out of the ground because I think they understood that having enemies alongside this boss can be a problem, but at the same time, why do you include them? And look at that just then. That evade animation I just did, that's the one that can get you screwed a lot of the times. And I don't even think you get iframes. Like, you don't get iframes during that evade animation as well. Why do you not get iframes during that animation? That right there doesn't make any sense. But I can't waste time just fighting these enemies. I have to get them out of the way. But the thing is that Ivy will not go into the phase where she'll fire projectiles unless the enemies are downed. Like, I have to down all the enemies in order to put Ivy into the state where she'll try to fire projectiles at me and she'll expose her core. However, this could lead to something you could do if you wanted to, but I don't think it's that interesting, or rather, it's not that practical. You could theoretically leave these enemies up and just keep throwing Batarangs at her, but just avoiding the vines. However, like I've already mentioned before with the problems present with the vines and with Batman's animations, with the fact that they're free-flow animations that don't complement the anti-free-flow nature of Poison Ivy, it's not practical to do in the slightest, and why anyone would want to do that, I don't know. And I don't know why I said interesting the first time, that was just a poor choice of words. But these enemies are downed, I believe, or is there still other enemies around? No, they're down. Okay, so this pattern is different. So the moment you see the projectile, you gotta make sure you're moving to the side and just press L2 the moment it fires. The moment it fires, press L2 while you're moving to the side. See that? Like, I sprint a little bit the moment the projectile fires. Like, the moment the projectile fires, I sprint to the side, and then I throw my Batarang. Look at that. See? And the hitbox on these projectiles is really good. Again, this should have been the full fight. This is a lot of fun to do. I feel like there's a lot of skill involved with understanding the pattern on when you're supposed to throw your Batarang, and it's a lot of fun to go through that. But you want to mix it up with this shit? And then I have to run the risk of Batman doing the wrong animation. I have to run the risk of Batman prioritizing the wrong guy. And look at that just then. That could have been bad. It's just there's some weird invisible barriers on the back end of this arena that can screw you sometimes when you're trying to evade away from Ivy's vines. So you gotta be careful of that. But once again, I'm just repeating the whole stupid process of just pulling these enemies constantly with the Ultra Bat Claw. I'm taking the time to knock out enemies when Ivy's giving me a breather. And yeah, just watch the tentacles correctly. Watch where the grass is. Try to get out of those sectors. And I'm once again pulling the enemies. Be careful of any moments where the Bat Claw misses, because the Bat Claw can miss enemies. So don't think for a second that you've gotten all the enemies, because there could be enemies that the Bat Claw didn't prioritize, and you want to evade over them if that happens. Or counter them if evading over them will cause you to go into the vines. But the enemies are downed again, and we're about to begin this really fun phase. So again, the pattern's the same. I'm going to move to the side. I'm going to actively move to the side. And then the moment the projectile comes out, I'm going to sprint to the side and then press L2 immediately because the hitbox on these projectiles is really fair. They don't have any phantom range, which is nice. Like, to think they could make the hitbox on these projectiles good, yeah, they made the vines that annoying to deal with in certain parts of this fight. I don't understand that. And there's just no creativity associated with this part of the fight. Like, why can't I just use the Batclaw to pull them off the tentacles and they just fall down into the abyss? Or, like, there could have been other ways of doing this. Like, why can't I just use a Batarang to knock them off or something? And, like, you can knock these guys off the arena, but it has to be so close to the front of the arena. And staying on the front of the arena is not a good place to be because... I mean, you've seen the way the vines work, but obviously if I'm at the front of the arena, I'm giving myself less opportunity to actually evade away from these vines. Because obviously, like, the vines spawn from the front of the arena, and then they move actively towards the back of the arena. So I'm putting myself in a position where I have less time to actually dodge those vines. And you see that just then? The Batclaw missed that guy, which is why I had to make sure I was paying attention. Like, that's why I countered that guy. I mean, I had a feeling I missed someone, which is why I was moving very slowly. But there's only 3 guys left. And see that just then? If I was caught doing the free flow evade while I was in the middle of that sector, I was grabbed. That is so dumb. That's really dumb. Like, did they really need enemies for this? There could have been so many other ways of introducing threats to the player without them having to be enemies that complement the free flow combat. Like, can you imagine if Ivy had the ability to use certain projectiles on you, and you just threw your Batarang at them and disabled the projectiles? I mean, the systems are there. Like, when you have those Titan-infected plants, like, throughout the open world, and the spores spawn, you can use your Batarang in order to destroy the projectiles, but there could have been something similar like that. But of course, then again, that would be a problem, because the game would have trouble prioritizing Ivy or those spores. But then again, you really shouldn't be damaging Ivy when her core is not exposed. But of course, like, when she's low on health, you'll want to just throw all your Batarangs at her while she's trying to use vines. But again, I'm going to move to the side the moment the projectile fires, and then I'm going to use my Batarang. Like, it's really fun, this phase. I really like it, but no, it has to be mixed up with this. And really right here, I should be using my my Batarang, but it's just I got to get these enemies out of the way. And I need to wait until Ivy does her Vine attack, because I'll know I'll have a breather after she does her Vine attack. And I'm very close to downing her. And one good thing that the game does is when Ivy falls down after losing all her health, all the enemies get incapacitated. So you won't have to deal with them when you're trying to place the explosive gel, which is a really great reward. And it's also well designed, because these enemies could be bullshit when trying to place the explosive gel. And, like, you've earned this. You've earned going through this really miserable fight that just takes forever to do. Why factor in any moment where enemies are just active when you down Ivy? And she's down, and that is the end of this fight. And the enemies are going to be incapacitated, place the explosive gel, and that is it. This will conclude Poison Ivy's boss fight. Stay tuned for the final part. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.